So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another episode of Is It That Bad, where we take a look at an album and maybe an album that maybe it's not good or maybe people have mixed feelings with it, and we re-listen to it, and then we pick three songs that we think maybe are the weakest, and then we give our final thoughts and vote at the end, thumbs up or thumbs down. And I'm excited to have for the first time on the channel Mary from Mary's Tasting Music. So, Mary, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. And of course, we have if you don't know them by now, you don't watch the channel. We have, of course, Tom the Green Man, and as you can see, Tom is not in his usual place. Uh,
No.
he's building his saw traps for people who do not subscribe to his channel. And then we have, of course, JC Rock and Metal Reviews joining us again. So today we're gonna pick a band that when people hear the band that we pick, because usually when I think of this band, I don't think of bad. We're talking about Nine Inch Nails because Nine Inch Nails is Mary's favorite band. So I asked her, like, which album should we pick? And we picked The Slip from 2008. So this is an album that I remember when it came out because the band actually you could get it free from their website because it was out first digitally. And I remember when it came out, I did went on the website and get it. So yeah, I did. I'm a Nine Inch Nails fan, so I've always enjoyed them. So this is an interesting one because like usually we pick some albums that people know, yeah, we know they're bad, but this one is an interesting pick. So so you know the drill. So we're gonna do the first round. So since Mary is new, we're gonna have someone else start, and then we'll go with Mary so she can see the vibe of the episode. So let's start with Tom today. So Tom, your initial impressions of The Sleep by Nine Inch Nails.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm a very casual listener when it comes to Nine Inch Nails.
Shame on you.
I know. I don't mind a song from them when it comes on. I'll listen to it. But I genuinely haven't really listened to many of their albums apart from I think the Downward Spiral. And I think it was their 2005 one, which I've even forgotten the name of now. It's gone from my head. So that's a sign of how big a fan I am of Nine Inch Nails.
Year zero.
Year zero. So with this album, as I understand it, it was actually released the same year as another album, Ghost 1 to 4. And I found that interesting that this was quite, pretty soon it was released after that one, because Trent Reznor drew some inspiration during the period after the release of Ghost 1 to 4. So I thought that was an interesting little fact about this album that's not sort of the, you'd maybe sort of think there'd be a longer gap between albums from particularly from well-established bands and things, but not in this case. Quite interesting to have one in the modern day, particularly released so soon after that one. So I'm going to reserve some of my judgment, obviously, for the final round on this, because I figure it will spoil it if I say whether or not I think it's obviously that bad at this stage. I think it's an album which is very interesting in the way it's textured. And it's layered, I think, and I think it would be an easy album to pass off on the first listen. I think for me, I found with this, obviously listening to it really for the first time properly this time around for this episode, I found like you kind of discover little things about it, and it feels like a kind of album which is more one you might appreciate as a whole. For me, as listening to it front to back. Instead of dipping into one thing on here. For me, I found it better as an experience. But yeah, obviously, I think that's sort of my initial impression of this one without digging too far into the next rounds.
Nice. Good first impressions, Tom. So Mary, you being a super Nine Inch Nails fans, your first impressions when you first listened to this?
Yeah, so yeah, Nine Inch Nails are my all-time favorite band. I just love them. I heard this one it was probably about 6 years ago now when I first started getting into them. It was probably one of the last ones I heard by them actually, and I always remember about it is that it took quite a long time to click for me. A lot of their other albums, like The Downward Spiral and The Fragile, were kind of love at first listen. But I think with this one, is probably, that's why I wanted to talk about it today, I think, because it was probably the most, it took the longest time to click for me. I think the sound, the production is a little bit, it takes kind of, your ears need some time to get used to it. I think the kind of fuzzy, distorted production is a little, it was difficult for me at first, I think, because I was kind of used to a different sound by them. But I do remember thinking it was quite short, because Nine Inch Nails albums are usually pretty long. So I remember thinking this one was, I'm sure it's only 40 minutes or something like that. So I was a bit like, oh, because I usually prefer their kind of longer, more conceptual albums. But the more I listened to it, I think it really did start to click for me. And I noticed that it has a very coherent sound. Lyrically, there's a lot of kind of similar themes. To its detriment as well, I think, because a lot of the songs blend in together and some of them are quite similar. But I think it's nice in the way that it's quite like a succinct piece. You can kind of just visit it when you're in the mood for that kind of sound. But overall, it took a while to click for me, but I think it's got some really, really high moments, but a few low ones as well.
Yeah, that seems fair. And yeah, originally I was reading this was gonna be an EP. But then he decided and he did it, and he did a full length album. But yeah, for Nine Inch Nails, 43, it's like 42 or minutes or something. It's short for them. So JC, your initial thoughts listening to this one?
Yeah, it was funny. You asked me to do this video. I think it was like last week or in the middle of last week. And the first thing I did is I opened it up in YouTube Music, and I look at the track list, and I'm thinking to myself, what, like, I see like the 99,000 and the 1 million song, and then I'm thinking, like, this looks very familiar. Like, how do I know this? So I had to like look up the information, and then I remembered it was like, yeah, it came out in 2008, and it was a free download. So I remembered back in those days, I did download it to my computer. So I I've been listening to Nine Inch Nails pretty much since the beginning. I've been a fan since Pretty Hate Machine and Downward Spiral. I think they're really great albums. During in like the mid 2000s, I remember I used to like download songs. If anyone remembers iTunes, and then you can like download the individual songs for like $1. I used to like make like mixtapes with Nine Inch Nails songs. So I usually didn't buy full albums, but I saw this was like free, so I'm like, cool, I'll download it. So it was my first time listening to it in like a really long time. I mean, maybe like 15 years or so, because I had totally forgot about it. It was I think I mean I like that it's short, just because I kind of like like shorter albums. It just they're easier to listen to, but I thought it was interesting because there were some songs that I enjoyed. I enjoyed like the singles, and then there was like some kind of like different stuff that got a little experimental. So, I'll say more in the next few rounds. But yeah, it was interesting because it was something that I had completely like forgotten about, and then I'm like revisiting it for after like many years. That's all I'll say for now. Yeah.
Aren't you glad, JC, that it's not U2 and they force fed you the album? Like it appeared on your phone, like, listen to this. They were like, no, you can get it for free. So I've been a Nine Inch Nails fan since the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. Anyone that watched my channel, I think pretty knows that I love the 90s. Like, like I cover everything. I like cover new music, but I love to talk about the 90s because to me, I don't know, it's when I was growing up, and those albums and have great like value for me. So I got into Nine Inch Nails when they released the Downward Spiral. That's when I got into them, and I've been a fan. I still haven't seen them live, so I'm jealous, Mary. You've seen them live, and that's one of the bands on my bucket list to see live. And my other friend Mary has seen them, and I remember she went to see them, and she sent me pictures and videos. I'm like, why are you torturing me? Like, like I want to be there. But I did listen to this album when it came out, but I hadn't listened to this album in years. I think I just remembered Discipline, which was the single that they released for this. And I remember that one because Discipline kind of sounds a little bit like when I listen to that sound, it's kind of a little bit of the sound of the with the Thief record. I don't know why it reminds me a little bit of the Hand That Feeds, another song. It has like that similarity. But I hadn't listened to this album in a long time. So when I was debating with Mary, like, oh, should we do this one? I thought I had three picks: this one, or Year Zero, or Hesitation Marks, which are basically considered like because Ghost 1 to 4, those are instrumental. So I'm like, no. But we picked. Mary told me this one. I'm like, yeah, let me pick this one because this is one of the albums that I've less heard from them. So going back to it. With fresh ears. Yeah, it's a little bit different from other albums, and you have to understand. Like for me, Nine Inch Nails, like the last after With Thief, I think With Thief was a very underrated. And Year Zero for me, I did enjoy some songs. So I was a little bit at this time like I wasn't paying too much attention to Nine Inch Nails, but yeah, when I first listened to this, I think I enjoyed it to some extent. So going back to it, it was interesting, to get back to it and revisiting it. But yeah, back in the day, I did download, I did listen to it, but it's one of those albums that I honestly didn't remember that much. So it was interesting. So yeah, those were my initial thoughts with this album. So now we're going to round two to pick the three tracks that we think are the weakest. So Tom, what tracks did you pick?
So I found the start of this album a little bit like that was the part of the album that I personally struggled with the most for me. Like, so 1 Million is one of my choices. I didn't actually dislike this song that much, but it had a particular rhythm to it that kind of got on my nerves a little bit after a while, after giving it a few listens. So that would be one of my least favorite tracks. I still thought it kind of has that fuzzy sound on this one a lot, as you get quite a lot on the rest of the album, but it's the particular style of this song and the delivery of it I just liked a bit less than some of the other songs on the album, I think. So 1 Million would be my first pick. The next one, which was an easy pick for me, was Letting You. I think it was where you've got this really sort of repetitive vocal line, the chorus, so it just kind of, again, repetition for me is just, I mean, for some people, you might enjoy that kind of a song, I think, but for me, it was just too repetitive for my liking. But it wasn't long and it wasn't that bad a song, but it just kind of, yeah, I found it a bit tricky to listen to. Lastly, I've got The Four of Us Are Dying, but the reason I've picked that one is more because of where it is on the album than the song itself. Because you kind of have two slower tracks before that, incidentally, two tracks I actually liked quite a bit. But then this one comes in, it's like another third kind of slower track. By that point, I'm sort of being lulled into a different mood on the album, and it just, I fell out of the album a bit at that particular point. So that would be my third pick. So 1 Million, Letting Go, and The Four of Us Are Dying.
Yeah, and I think this is when I think this is Mary. I don't know if you correct me, but I think this is when he started working a lot with Atticus Ross, right?
Yeah, I think so. Atticus came on during With Teeth, but this is when they started really. He was getting kind of gearing up to get Atticus to join the band.
Yeah. Oh, and Tom, when you said 2005, I did a typo. It was With Teeth in 2005. I think Year Zero was 2006 or 2007. So
Right.
With Teeth.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah, I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's the one. So Mary, for you, what three tracks would you pick for this?
So I'm kind of laughing to myself actually, because Tom, you have basically just said everything that I was going to say, but I'm going to try and re-say it with putting a positive spin, because this is my favorite band. So I'm loyal. I'm here. I'm not gonna too much. But you basically have just said what I was trying to say. So the first choice for me is going to be Letting You. I skipped this one. Honestly, this is a massive skip for me. I don't know what it is about it. There's something that I think it's jarring, and it gets a little bit irritating. And it's, as you said, it's not long, so it's not like, you know, the end of the world. But if it comes on shuffle, I am going to skip it. I think I did see it live actually, and it was much better live. That it really has a good energy around it, and obviously to start off the album, it builds momentum nicely. But I just think it's not clicked with me. It's not really, something's not connected. I think it might be those distorted guitars. There's something production wise that I think is not clicking with me. And Nine Inch Nails, their whole thing is production. That's their like bread and butter. That's what everyone loves about them so much. So there's just something there that's not really great for me. Second choice is A Million. And kind of the same reasons as Letting You, really. Lyrically, there are a lot of stronger songs. And again, it's just not really clicked. There's something about it that's a little irritating for me. And to have those two songs next to each other, I think it suffers a little bit because they are quite similar in their rhythmic like changes and things like that. So never been a huge fan of those two. And then my third choice is Corona Radiata, and kind of for similar reasons as you chose The Four of Us Are Dying. It could have been either one of those really, because again they're slightly similar. The sequencing of where they are in the album does them no favors because it takes you away from the kind of experience, because two instrumental tracks next to each other is a very bold move on an album that relies on kind of catchy, funky, you know, bass heavy songs, things like that. So I do like this song and I will listen to it, but it just takes you away from the listening experience for me a little bit. So if I could remove it from the album, I probably would.
Yeah, and probably that song, I don't know why that song sounds like maybe it could have been on the Social Network soundtrack, which I'm sure they were working on at the time because that movie came out in 2010. Or that song kind of feels like it should have been on something else. But I'll keep more when I do my choices. So JC, the free tracks that you pick.
I'm gonna pick kind of three that come right after each other. First one, track number 6, Head Down. I think it was, for some reason, like it sounded more like a Helmet or a Prong type of song with like those like stop-start vocals. It just it was that, and the fact that the production, I think like Tom mentioned this word before, is like very like noisy and like very like fuzzy. Like that's kind of like bothered me about this. And they use a lot of those like like the electronic noises kind of sound like, remember when you used to have to like go on the dial-up internet and you hear those like computer noises. I know only Hector knows what I'm talking about. But,
yeah, I know.
yeah, that's kind of what it reminded me of. So I picked number 6, and then I'm gonna pick the next two because Lights in the Sky. It's not bad. I just kind of felt it was out of place. I mean, it kind of sounds like something from like a later day Radiohead type of album. It was like, yeah, it's soft, it's ambient, atmospheric, but it kind of felt out of place on some. And then that goes into the next one, Corona Radiata, where it's another one that's very just long and instrumental, but I think it's like really like that was like a 7 or 8 minute song, and it just kind of like drags down the album because the first few songs are kind of like, upbeat, they're more like energetic songs, and then it kind of like goes into this like really like slow and atmospheric, like different type of sound. So I thought that takes away from it. Actually, like the next song, Before of Us Dying, actually liked a little more. I'll talk about that later. But my picks are those three, the tracks 6, 7, and 8. Yeah.
Nice. It's good to pick different ones because, for example, for me, when you were talking about A Million something, I'm like, that's one of my favorite tracks. I thought that opens the album like really good. But one of my picks is Letting You. And I think it's because the way that Trent Reznor's voice sounds, it sounds like very kind of like non-natural, robotic. And it's like letting you. And it kind of gave me a little bit of a headache. It is kind of annoying and repetitive, and like the sound of the song like stays almost like in the same sound. And something that I always like about Nine Inch Nails is that they can a song can have like many layers and change sounds constantly, and this one just felt like it felt like the same tune throughout the song, and it was kind of boring to me in that way. I pick "Lighting Up the Sky." That's the name, right? Or did I just did like a Godsmack track? No.
Godsmack. No, the lights in the sky. Yeah.
Lights
Yeah,
in the
Light
Sky.
in the Sky. Lights in the Sky. That the problem with me for that one is that usually Nine Inch Nails finish an album like with this type of ballad, like on Downward Spiral they have heard. On With Thief, I think they have one that is like a slower track that I can't remember the name of the top of my head. And this one just sounds like a version from Wish. It's not as great as those tracks. It's not as memorable. So yeah, and also it's kind of a slower track, but when I mentioned Hurt and the one from With Thief, they're like slower tracks, but they have like changes in the song, and this song stays like linear the whole way. And also I thought like Trent's vocals were so low that sometimes I couldn't even hear what he was saying, because he was almost like he was whispering. Plus, I think the placement of the song is weird, because then they go into the two instrumentals, and I also pick one of the instrumentals. I pick Corona Radiata just because it's like almost 8 minutes, and and I was like in the zone, and it's not a bad song, but it just felt out of place and too long for its own good. Like it took me away from the experience, and like I said before, maybe that's a song that would have been fitted better more for the Ghost 1 to 4 project, or it sounded to me like it was something that could have been on the Social Network soundtrack, which I think is a great soundtrack to a movie, and it had that similar. So that's why I picked those 3 songs in particular. So now we're going into the third and final round, where we give our final thoughts and impressions, and we give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So Tom, your final thoughts on this album?
Yeah, I don't think this is that bad. I think I'm going to save it. I think it's not an album I probably would. One of these that I wouldn't actively seek out to listen to, I don't think. Having said that, whilst I'm listening to it, I can kind of quite enjoy it just to have on, maybe listen to whilst I'm maybe doing something else. And yeah, it's sort of enjoyable enough. I really enjoyed some of the track. I think it was the last track that I really liked. I think I really liked that closing track. Just had a bit of kind of a kind of cool groove to it and everything. And I quite liked Corona Radiator for a time. I'm a fan of ambient music, and it sort of did that for a while, but like you've all said, it's also a point in the album where you sort of fall out, because there's a long period when you've just had these sort of fuzzy banger kind of tracks. Then you've got this lull and 3 tracks back to back, which are quite slow instrumentals. I actually really liked the one before. The Lights was, oh God, I've got to say it right now. Lights in the Sky, not Light Up the Sky, Lights in the Sky. And I sort of enjoyed that. Like, it was kind of weirdly effective. I don't know what it was about it, but I quite liked it. Yeah, so those tracks I really dug. Oh, Echoplex as well. I really liked that one. So I enjoyed some of the electronics, some of the texturing, the layering. There's a bit of craftsmanship about this album, the way it works together as a whole. Like, it felt like maybe he did this all very in quick succession. All the songs on here, I don't know that much about. Maybe Mary knows, as the sort of the hardcore fan. But yeah, I'll save this. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually read they recorded this like in a month.
Yeah.
And they released it like I was reading that the Discipline, they just mixed it, and after they mixed it, they sent it the next day to radio stations. So it was like very like fast, and that's not usually a Nine Inch Nails. Like usually they take their time. So this one, I think they just let it out into the world. So Mary, your final thoughts and rating on this one?
So, first of all, yeah, it's not that bad for me. Definitely not. It gets a thumbs up, obviously. I think it's an interesting one. And as you said, it was released in such a you know, short amount of time, which was really out of character for Nine Inch Nails. But they just finished the with their record label, so they were just kind of trying some new things, and I think it benefits from that, but it also kind of suffers from that a little bit. Some of the songs sound a little bit unfinished. Obviously, I'm glad no one mentioned Echoplex as their worst songs, because that is, to me, is top 5 Nine Inch Nails songs ever. I love it. But yeah, I think it kind of suffers a little bit because some songs, the ones we've mentioned, maybe sound a little bit unfinished, and if they'd have spent more time or had more time, they could have been polished out a little bit more. I'm not sure in what way, but potentially, or the sequencing of the album, obviously we've spoken about as well. But I do think it's quite an underrated album. I think it passed a lot of people by because it was released for free, and in that kind of way. I saw a few comments of people that were there at the time that just said because it was released for free, they didn't really think it was worth checking out because they just thought it was, you know, a bit rubbish or just not important. So obviously I wasn't a Nine Inch Nails fan at that time, but I'm sure I wouldn't have thought that. And I'm a real fan of this album because of the lyrical themes. I think I quite like the loneliness, isolation, despair, you know, all those kind of things that are spoken about in songs like Echoplex and Demon Seed. Obviously, Trent had been recovered from his drug addiction, and I feel like there's always kind of drug addiction themes scattered in here and there, even in the later Nine Inch Nails album. So I'm a fan of that because I feel like it's kind of the juxtaposition between the upbeatness of the songs, especially Echoplex. It's such like a funky, groovy, danceable song, but the lyrical content is actually very depressing when you listen to it properly. And I always love songs like that. So I love the funky, catchy moments. Top 3 songs are going to be Echoplex, Demon Seed, and Discipline. I think Discipline has got a great, catchy chorus. Once I've listened to it, it's in my head for the rest of the day. So overall, I think this should be given more, it should be spoken about more and should be given a chance. I probably wouldn't recommend it to someone as their first Nine Inch Nails album. I do think you need a little bit of context to the band and hearing some of their previous work. Otherwise, you might be like, probably never want to listen to them again. But for someone that's kind of familiar with their work, I think that this is a great continuation of what they were doing, and obviously the sound that they ended up going on to with Hesitation Marks. So thumbs up from me.
Great. Yeah, no, great analysis. So JC, your rating for this and maybe a history lesson? Joking.
Well, it's a, I mean, a thumbs up, definitely. Actually, I think I like the album. I mean, I like that it's just concise. I think, you know, it's, you know, the problems that I talk about were like towards the end where they go from like these like more like, you know, typical Nine Inch Nails songs, then they go for the more like instrumental ambient stuff. But I think they're not on their own, they're not really bad songs. I think like Corona Radiata, I would listen to it if I like wanted something to fall asleep to or something like that. And I'm just saying that as a good thing. But I mean the rest of the songs I actually liked. I mean, like that like 99,000 into 1 million. I thought that's a pretty good song. All of you mentioned Letting You. I thought that was pretty good. I mean, it was catchy, even with the being repetitive. I thought it was good. Discipline, I really love that song. I think that's a great song. Same with Echoplex. I really like that one a lot. And going towards the end, out of the instrumentals, that they did like 3 instrumentals in a row, right? So The Four of Us Are Dying. I like that one because it kind of like reminded me of like post-punk, like the like Joy Division, Sisters of Mercy, like had that like bass guitar sound. I really like that. And here's some history for you. The Four of Us Are Dying. I like it because it was named after like a Twilight Zone episode, and like that's like one of my favorite shows ever. I don't know if anyone watches that, but I really like that because of that. And last song, Demon Seed, I thought it was good. I think I felt it was a little similar to like Echoplex, that type of sound. It was had some like psychedelic rock in there. So I think it's a decent album. I think it might be like better as far as like picking singles or, you know, picking songs, putting them on a playlist as opposed to listening to it front to back. But I think like also works listening to it front to back because it's not that long. So anyway, it's a thumbs up for me. Yeah.
Thanks, JC. So JC, I haven't seen the Twilight Zone, but Does writing the Tower of Terror Twilight Zone in Disney count in the show?
Maybe, yeah.
Because I've been on that. So yeah, that's the most I think I know about the Twilight Zone. And I also interviewed a band called Serling, which is a band that is
Yeah, I
all
remember.
like it's all like Twilight Zone themed. So that's interesting. So yeah, for me, I'm thumbs up. I'm a Nine Inch Nails fan. If like Mary, if you haven't listened to Nine Inch Nails, I wouldn't recommend this album as your starting point. I think you should start with Pretty Hate Machine, Downward Spiral,
Yeah.
maybe The Fragile, and with Thief. I just named my 4 favorites from them. So I would start with those. I think that I some tracks I love from here. I think Discipline kind of reminds me of a little bit like it also has that vibe from With Thief with Only, with that
Yeah.
instrumentals and electronics, and Echoplex. Yeah, that one has that electronic vibe that is really good. The last song on this record is great as well. And even though I picked some songs, I don't hate any songs from this album. I just think as a whole, as a Nine Inch Nails record, it's not as good as some of their other material, but obviously we have all saved this because, you know, it's Nine Inch Nails, and Nine Inch Nails is pretty, even the worst Nine Inch Nails album is better than a lot of the crap that you listen to nowadays. So yeah, we've all saved it. What do you think, Mary? Do you agree with my statement?
Absolutely, yeah. A Nine Inch Nails album can never be bad. I mean, they'll probably release something terrible now, and I'll look stupid. But I think that they can never make a bad album.
Yeah, and funny story. When I was in high school, I was very pale and I had long hair, and people actually thought that I looked like Trent Reznor. I'm like, I wish, and that I look like, but. Like when he cut his hair shorter, I did the same. Where he left a beard, as you can see, I'm like I'm just the Puerto Rican version of Trent Reznor. Like hopefully, maybe my girlfriend. Maybe I show him a picture and she'll think like, yeah, you look like him. Yes, Hector. So, but yeah, we've saved this album because yeah, it's that good. It's that good. So hopefully, Mary, I hope you enjoyed your first time here on the Is It That Bad episode, and you can return anytime because it's really fun. So we want to know from you people, what do you think of The Slip by Nine Inch Nails? Do you think it's that bad or do you think it's good? What are your favorite tracks from it? Comment, and also comment what are your worst tracks. So coming up next for Is It That Bad, we have a few episodes coming. I put a poll of 4 Judas Priest records. So please keep voting on them because the one that gets the highest amount of votes will be covered on this channel. And we're also covering sometime soon an album by U2. And it's going to be that album that was force-fed to you if you had iTunes. And they're like, here, have some Bono. So we're going to talk about that album in the future. And comment also what other records would you like us to cover. Also this year for Is It That Bad, we're going to do newer albums that are released because I just read that there's a new Trapped album coming on the way. So it's probably bad. There's Scott Stapp. So we got to talk about Scott Stapp on Is It That Bad? And I think there's another one out of the top of my head that's coming. Oh, Alien Ant Farm has a new album. And I just said, and I'm like, I just assume, yes, it's gonna be bad. So we're gonna cover those newer albums on the channel just because. So before we go, please subscribe to my guest channels. Mary's Tasting Music. She has a great channel, and what I like about your channel, Mary, is that you know you're very like you're very proper and nice. Like there's some YouTubers that are not nice at all. Fantano, that we're like they're like total dicks to music, and I like it because you talk with enthusiasm about music. And she has a new series that was a great idea, where she takes albums that she's not familiar with and she listens to them for the first time. What's the name of that series, Mary?
So I don't actually know. I think I'm calling it first time listens.
Yeah.
I just did Bathory's self-titled album. I'm trying to get into the one with black metal.
I congratulate you on that because I couldn't. Oh my God. I like it when you said this sounds like Metallica. And I was looking at your video. I'm like, yes, Metallica, but sounding shitty.
Well, it's not for me to say. And I've just done Violator by Depeche Mode, which will be up
Ooh,
next week. So yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I love Depeche Mode. So yeah, she's got that series and she's got other things. And when Steven Wilson put out his latest record, unlike me, she was invited. Obviously, Steven Wilson wouldn't send a jet for me to fly to London and listen to his album, but he did invite me.
Stephen personally, it was his management, but still cool.
I don't think they were gonna fly me from Puerto Rico to London.
Never know.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. So please subscribe to her channel. She's got great content. And of course, Tom the Green Man, if you like horror, if you like fantasy, and if you like also he does album reviews, and he sometimes he does album reviews of more like albums that are less commercial, or like we all do sometimes because we like to do that. And he's got a new series that is all about symphonic Sundays, where he talks about like symphonic metal, and he'll have some guests on it. So that's gonna be really cool as well. So subscribe to his channel. And
Starting today.
If you want some history lesson, if you want to be, if you want to know more about band's history, JC Rock and Metal Reviews is the channel for you. He also does like album rankings, and he talks about all different type of genres in metal. So subscribe to his channel. And I want to thank like the last few months I've had a lot of people subscribe to my channel. So it's it's very exciting. I do this because I love music, and I like sharing music that I like with people. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I interview bands from different genres, and of course I do this series once in a while. So until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.